So today I'm joined by Brittney Hamer, who's the Director, Campaign and Digital Marketing at Gamewell Technologies. Brittney, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, ABM, as we all know, has been around for 20, 21, 22 years in its current guise that people know about. And when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile prior to contacting you, I saw that you had a lot of experience. I think eight or 9 years. So that kind of makes you a veritable veteran in the ABM world. So I suppose I've got some questions for you really about that, as you've got that kind of body of experience in ABM. I think the first question I got is. You've been over the different roles that you've been in, you've been continuously investing in account-based marketing and account-based strategies. So why, number one, I suppose is my first question. And I suppose my second question is, when is it that you see, based on everything you've done in the previous roles and your current role at Gamewell Technologies, when is it that you see ABM working well? I.e., what are the conditions that you need to go into a company for it to work well? Those two questions kind of hit you straight out of the bat.
Sure. Well, first off, so when it works well, I think the biggest thing is alignment. You need alignment with your counterparts, whether it's sales, customer success, and buy-in. You need buy-in from the organization, and not just within marketing. I think it's easy to sell it in marketing, but it's a little harder to sell it outside of marketing because it's still a program that is relatively, I feel like, unknown outside of marketing. There's a lot of sales, finance, C-suite that may not be as um, versed on it. And so, really trying to sell it and show the impact of it to get buy-in to even run a pilot. I think running a pilot is the best option anytime you're trying to onboard an ABM program and sell it, because the proof is in the pudding, and you will run a program and see results and be able to share those results that are undeniable, to whoever you need to in your buying center.
Yeah. So in terms of the 8 or 9 years that you've been in this role, obviously ABM has been your companion, so to speak, across those different roles that you've been in. Going back to that point about the conditions, what I suppose is that number one condition that you found in those different roles, whether it was in the role at the beginning or whether you made it happen as part of your time in each role. What is that one condition that you said to yourself, if I get that right, everything else will fall into place?
Yeah, I, again, I think some of it goes back to alignment, is making sure that you are in sync with your counterparts. You know, you need to have a consistent, just collaboration and even externally messaging, and who you're going for. You need to really be aligned on who it is that are your target accounts and why. It can't be just because someone just wants that account as a client. You have to have a little bit more in that. Are they really a good fit? Is this the right time? And having those conversations and being on the same page, I think, is really what drives success in these programs.
Yeah, I was just making some notes there. I think the who and why, to push back to people and say, okay, that's great. You want those accounts, why?
Mhm.
You give me the who, but what's the why? And I think it's interesting. There's also Brittany, when you mentioned fit and timing as well. And a previous guest I was speaking to, Nora Conklin, who's the principal ABM analyst at Forrester. She talks a lot about when she's talking to her customers now about ABM and ICP. They actually have an expression which is it goes beyond ICP.
Mhm.
So some of the questions that they ask is, well, will they be a good fit for my company today and tomorrow? Will they actually be a company that I can actually grow with, that will want to grow with my company, that will actually, I'll be able to deliver value to them today and tomorrow. So I think the goes beyond ICP is a message that we're hearing in the market a lot now, and that's a great message to go back to, whether it's sales teams, account directors, etc., to say, look, one thing is what you're thinking today, but will they be the right companion tomorrow and the year after? So let's talk a little bit about Gamewell Technologies. I suppose one thing that's a little bit different when I was looking into your company was the fact that you kind of specialize, particularly I think in the public sector, in government and health, etc. And I think compared to many guests that I've spoken to on the show, the majority are in, Fortune 500, kind of, the kind of classic B2B marketing, etc. What and you're running ABM into this kind of market, this kind of ICP. What I suppose makes it different running marketing programs and ABM programs into the public sector?
I'd say because we're dealing with, government entities in the public sector, there's a lot more regulation and red tape around things. It's a lot longer buying cycle and a very, very complex buying center. So it expands more than just in a Fortune 500 company. You typically are only targeting within that account that you have in your campaign. With public sectors, but specifically with what we do here, there are other influencers outside of just the account. I mean, elected officials is a big one. There are also ones that we need to make sure that we have included as influencers and tailored messaging for them as well, because it's not just within the account, it goes beyond that when you're dealing with public sector.
Well, it's fascinating. I was just thinking through my head some of the kind of departments that you might be working with and then public organizations, and the fact, as you said, you've got the account, which is great, and you know how to build relationships inside there. But you, as you said, you need to work out, well, is there a board of governors, or is there some kind of independent panel that oversees this department or this agency? And I suppose then, does that mean when you're building your map, obviously you're building your buying committee and your decision making group, and then, for example, when it comes to these influencers, is it public knowledge, or do you just do quite a lot of investigation work to find out who these individuals are?
Most of it's public knowledge, but we
Mm,
also have a very close relationship within these accounts to find
yeah.
out more about who specifically could be, um, um, a good target within the campaigns. So it's a little bit different with our company specifically, is because we have such a small total addressable market. Our account managers are so ingrained with those accounts. So it's I feel like the leg up in this, I know we have a lot of regulation and red tape, but the positive in it is that we have such a tight knit, um, just relationship with them between our company and or the account managers and those accounts.
I mean, is it the case then that with these public sector bodies and organizations and healthcare groups, etc., um, is it the case that everything has to go through some kind of tender process? And so part of your ABM program is trying to influence the tender process as well? Or are there kind of open projects that you can be involved in without necessarily going through the formality of a tender process?
I'd say most of it is through procurement or RFP.
Yeah.
If there's a way we can not go to RFP for it, or for the account to not go to RFP, that's always better. But I'd say for most of them, that there's restrictions in place where they are required to procure every so often.
Yeah, and in terms of the RFP, because one element of ABM is obviously not just about, winning new logos or growing accounts, it's also about influencing and changing perceptions.
Mhm.
So is that somewhere how you're using account-based marketing, is to actually influence the group while they could be potentially thinking about doing an RFP, and you're kind of aware of their conversations a little bit. So you're trying to influence them with some of your ABM strategies?
Yeah, so we'll have, in collaboration with the AGMs and sales teams, we will have sessions, working sessions, and come up with messaging, pain points, anything that we can on it. But that doesn't mean that is set in stone within the entire campaign. There's often been times where an RFP will drop and we'll have to pivot from what we thought we were was going to be in it and what we were messaging against to what actually came out of it and what they're looking for and how we can position ourselves as the best candidate in the RFP.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of area, in many companies, they kind of call it pursuit-based marketing
Mhm.
or deal-based marketing. I know one of the previous guests on the show, Celia Slack, heads that up at ServiceNow, which is quite a well-known company in the ABM space as well. And I think she was talking about lots of late nights and weekends and crazy kind of like deadlines to meet when these RFPs drop. Let's
Mhm.
dig in, Brittany, a little bit into the ABM program you have there at Gainwell. Um, we talked about the kind of the ICP that you operate in, which is different to many other companies that are doing account-based marketing. But what would you say if you had to kind of boil down, what's the original challenge that you faced that made you say ABM is the right fit for that challenge?
I think really penetrated into the accounts, specifically with where we are in Gainwell right now, dealing with public sector, is it's a bit more challenging than it is probably in just a wider array of organizations out there in categories. But it is a bit harder, but I think that's why it works, is we can be very targeted and very specific in our campaigns and our messaging and, get that in front of them where we might otherwise struggle to get that message to them.
Yeah. And is the majority of the projects focused around customer expansion, or is it there's also some new logo in there as well?
Mostly customer expansion. The way
Mm,
we consider it is through lines of business. So we may have an account that is a current client, but if they are not a current client within a solution space, we would consider that a white space and a new logo. Even though the account itself probably has some sort of business with us, it's within the solution area that we would consider that we're trying to break
yeah.
into.
And on that point, when it comes to thinking about which accounts to go for, you obviously mentioned that you obviously talk closely to your account teams and your sales teams. Do you use any kind of matrix then to kind of prioritize, give a scoring model, or is it a bit more kind of flexible, the model?
It's a little bit more flexible, and we've tried to have a hard, like threshold around what we would support with campaigns, even what would, I mean, pretty much we will support everything in some form. It may not all be one on one, but maybe it's a one to few word solution or a one to many where it's just more of that brand that we're pushing out there. But regardless, we do still try to support them in any way we can. Um, Most of it, I would say, is revenue based, but again, like I mentioned, if we're trying to break into an account within certain solution area, the revenue potential for that specific, solution we're trying to get in might be lower than our threshold, but if there's a bigger opportunity for selling in and growing that revenue, then I would say that, we would probably count that a little higher in our hierarchy and, be more willing to do a one-on-one with them.
And that's actually an interesting point. So in terms of the programs, as we talk about one to many, one to few, one to one, what are you running a mix across all three there, or are you focused a bit more on the one to one, one to few, one to many?
Yeah, it's a mix, but I'd say because we have such a small total addressable market that, um, the way we have it set up is a lot more like a one-to-one, technically, set up is one-to-one. So every, account has its own campaign, but where we really, differentiate between what is considered a one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many is how we are positioning that campaign in there. So is it that it's a one-to-one because it's a high value account and we have a bunch of pain points we know that we can message against, which would constitute a one-to-one versus a overall solution where we may plug and play with different accounts that fit into that. So that's I'd say where it is, and it's good because it's so small, we are able to set up as a one-to-one because it gives us a lot more detailed information back that we're then able to relay back to the sales and account managers.
And to that point, Brittany, can you paint us a picture of the experience? So you mentioned there about the different pain points, different messaging that you then play back into the accounts and into the individuals within each account. Um, Is it primarily digital, or are you mixing digital and physical? Can you paint us a bit of a picture?
Mhm. We've had a lot of digital historically. We also have in-person, conferences that we will incorporate into campaigns, and we would also try to gather relevant intel that we can around specific accounts and target contacts that we can then relay back to the sales and account managers to arm them with that information for conversations in person at these events. We are also trying to, part of our 2025 initiative is to really expand out our field marketing. So we are growing our team on the ABM front and incorporating field marketing so that we can just mature our program even more.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, that does. And in terms of where you are today, with the program, I suppose one thing that many people find difficult to do well is to actually measure the results because of all the different things we know happen with account-based marketing
Mhm.
and the fact that it's quite hard to buy an off-the-shelf solution that can measure everything. But where are you internally there in terms of how you go about measuring? Is it a little bit manual, a little bit kind of digital? How do you manage it?
Probably more manual than we'd like, but we are working on that. But a lot of our KPIs around, account penetration and are we reaching that account and the contacts with that account. So because we, like I mentioned before, we have such a small target audience, and because of the close relationships that our account teams have with our accounts, that we have an advantage of knowing mostly who the target contacts are. So we're able to set up a lot of one-to-one, like people-based advertising, and relay that engagement back. So I think that has probably been the most sought after metric within the organization, is being able to have that context level engagement and track it through not just at an account level, that journey, but the contact journey as well.
And is that the number that then you can actually show to the people in the business and say, "Look, this is showing us that ABM is working," and then you can then tie it back directly because you mentioned your TAM is so small. You can then tie it back nicely to the impact in terms of additional revenue, new product lines, new business. Is that the case?
Right. And so the way we are set up here and just the nature of our business, marketing doesn't necessarily source pipeline, but I phrase it more as influence. We have an influence or impact, like you mentioned, on pipeline. Again, because it's that collaboration between the two teams.
No, that's a good point. And one thing when we were prior to doing this recording, we were talking about, and made me think a lot actually. You said that a lot of the buying committees that you are targeting are not active on LinkedIn. Now, obviously, a lot of people listening to this podcast will be thinking, "Oh, that makes things difficult,"
Yeah.
because obviously, in such a short space of time, LinkedIn has become such a powerful tool that all marketers or many marketers use for targeting and both, paid and organic, etc. So where I suppose my question to you is, if you don't go down the LinkedIn route, what channel do you use perhaps that other people may not be aware of to actually reach this audience?
We do a lot of display advertising as well, for just reach. Because not a lot of them are on LinkedIn, or they might have a LinkedIn profile but aren't necessarily active on LinkedIn. We try to reach out on other channels. So, Facebook, we've done that before, and have at a different company seen a lot better success, surprisingly, than we did on LinkedIn. So we put more money into that channel. We still have a lot invested in LinkedIn here because of our people-based advertising that we do, but, because it's a little bit harder to reach those people on that channel, we, will do, like I said, display advertising, and so that we can just get it out there where they are, consuming information, whether they're checking their email or they're on Forbes, and just getting our name out there and the message.
So it's a case almost of kind of keeping your name front and center while your account teams are doing a lot of the kind of heavy lifting, I suppose. Is that the case?
Yes, it's very important to stay top of mind because we are such a small market, and the competitors are very, small group of competitors as well, and very well known competitors within these accounts. So just staying top of mind and just reiterating the messages that we're trying to convey to them and get across, I think is great. And if you have an ABM tool in place that can handle display advertising, you can be a lot more granular and targeted and get those
Mm,
metrics back to get a
yeah,
better idea of if your message is getting out there.
yeah, that's a good point. And I see one question that you kind of mentioned 3 or 4 times now through the start of the conversation is around your account managers and how different they are and how crucial they are.
Right.
And obviously, at the top of the show, I mentioned that you've been in a whole variety of roles prior to joining Gainwell, and that obviously you've got a breadth of experience in terms of account-based marketing. Is there something that people listening to the show could learn about how different the work is that the account management team do there to get close to the customer? Because obviously you mentioned that they're feeding back constantly. They're aware of what's going on. They're your eyes and ears, so to speak, within these accounts,
Hmm.
and they're the ones that help you get get your message into the customer. What makes them different? Perhaps is I suppose the question.
I think it's just, I mean, that is their sole role, is to have these relationships within the accounts and to know what's going on and to know how we can help them. They're similar. They're somewhat of a hybrid between a sales and a customer success role put together. And I think in our industry, that's very valuable to have because they can, in these conversations, they can relay that back. We do still have a sales team, but it's just they get a lot of they are constantly meeting with them, and it's a one-to-one. So it's typically one account manager to one account. So I mean that relationship is just very strong and important because, it's one-to-one. They are able to commit, 100% of their time to that account versus sharing it across multiple.
And I thought linked to that point around the account managers, another thing you said to me, which I kind of made feverish, notes about it. You said that the account teams now ask you to arm them with insights, which basically there's no greater, validation of what you're doing than the account teams asking you to give them what they need, right? So when they say, please arm us with insights, what are you giving them that's actually helping them to be better at their job?
We do a lot of, well, in our reporting that we share back with them, what is it they're engaging with, whether it's at the account level overall or individual, if we're able to track that, so that that can help them in their conversations. If they're seeing a lot of engagement around a specific solution area or topic, they're able to leverage that in their conversations because they are, connected with them so often. We've had one, or it's happened a few times where we've actually been able to leverage intent data, which in typical ABM programs, like if you're marketing to a Fortune 500, intent is a pretty big indicator of being in market. For a lot of programs, they use that as a big metric. But for us, because of that close relationship, we know not necessarily from intent, but just from conversations, what might be coming through the pipeline. But we've had instances where we've seen a lot of intent around different topics, and not just intent monitoring, but intent being, specific solutions they're visiting on the webpage that may not match what the campaign is focused on. And so in conversations, relaying that back and seeing that consistent research occurring within the accounts, they have, been able to dig in and find out that, oh, there's an additional area of focus, or this other RFP that we were expecting months later is actually going to drop a lot sooner. And so, because we had that information and the account manager was able to go back to the account and casually bring it up, we were able to get ahead of the game where otherwise we probably would have been behind, and not known that that was an area that they were interested in.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that also shows that when you go back to the point you mentioned at the beginning about what is the kind of common condition that you find across these organizations, or you make sure exists, that kind of level of trust between you and the account teams, that they know that you've got their back and you're able to
Right.
help them with that information. Just a few more things to finish off with, really, Brittany. I think Another thing that you said to me, I kind of made a note of as well, that you said that what makes a great campaign is when you're always experimenting. And I think that is a common theme also across a lot of ABMers is that one I suppose one thing that separates it from other B2B marketing is that you are or you do have to continually experiment, right? So can you give us an example of that in terms of where you've seen that work really well for you?
Sure. Yeah, I love the always be experimenting because I'll joke, ABX is account-based experience, but I joke it's always be experimenting, because I think that's what also makes a great program and keeps maturing it. So whether it's experimenting with imagery, messaging, channels, different tactics, I think you should always be out there, trying it out. It may not work, but at least you would know. And I say even not just experiment with what I just mentioned, but within the campaigns. What works for one campaign may not work for another. And I know I've seen that, and not just within public sector and healthcare and other organizations I've worked in where you're like, wow, this one campaign and what we did worked really well. Let's use this playbook for another. And most of the time it will probably work, but sometimes it doesn't. So then it's digging in to see what is it that was different about this one? Was it because it was a different solution, the messaging, trying to dig in and see what it is to make it better. And one thing recently that we've experimented with that I was a bit surprised performed as well, was a new channel, that or tactic that we pushed out was, connected TV. I thought, all right, it's just going to be, another brand awareness level. But I was very surprised to see that just within a 3-month pilot that we did with doing this new initiative, that we had a 66% lift in target account traffic to our website. And I thought it was just gonna be more of a, brand awareness, they see it, and there's not a great way to measure it, but to have some of those, metrics to tie back to, I think it helped us invest a little bit more in it. And it's just another way to get out there, um, aside from your traditional, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah.
It's where they're streaming, if they're watching Netflix or Hulu and all of a sudden they see an ad for you, it's getting them outside of where they normally are and outside of that work mode. And it's just another way to stay top of mind.
And with that connected TV example, what kind of targeting can you achieve?
We have it set up. So we are doing it currently through LinkedIn and through display. And we're able to do it on an account level. Again, I think that's just probably part of the way we just have our program set up because we're so small, everything's set up at the account level. We initially launched it as a campaign itself, and all the accounts were just included in the target list. But we said, well, let's see what we can see on an account level and get those metrics back. So we set it up a bit differently and now we're able to see it at the account level. And so that ties in with our reporting a little bit easier, when we're reporting back out on these campaigns that, connected TV is another avenue that we've been seeing engagement on.
Well, I think that's one for the audience to look into really, because I don't think there are too many people doing that, but definitely one to look into. Question for you actually, which may throw you, but bear with me. I was just thinking before this call, had lots of conversation with ABMers over the years, and I've never had so many questions and conversations around AI than I have in the last kind of 2 or 3 months, in terms of artificial intelligence and the use cases in B2B marketing and account-based marketing. Have you started looking into that within your organization in terms of use of AI and ChatGPT and the rest of it? Is that something you're across, or is it kind of not there yet? Or
It is something that we do entertain a little bit. I know some organizations still see it as a bit taboo, but I think if you can implement it the correct way, that it's very, very valuable. One way we are trying to implement it is through a content experience platform. So not only will it be able to populate content based on trends that it's been seeing within those accounts or contacts. It can also help with messaging. So if it's connected with your CRM and it can see, oh, this specific title is visiting, then it can populate content or messaging based on those titles. And I think that's really, really awesome because it's better than trying to set everything up manually and have 40,000 different landing pages based on different personas. So to have it a bit more dynamic and use AI to populate that, I think is such a huge, huge time saver.
Well, that's a great use case actually. So I think it'd be good for the audience to look into that. And I think, yeah, we're seeing so many different use cases for it across whether it's account selection, whether it's insights development, whether it's creative, whether it's scoring modeling for measuring ROI. I mean, there's a whole it touches everywhere, to be honest. And I think it's just a case, as you said, Brittany, to be a little bit cautious about where you want to use it and how, and to make sure you have the guardrails in place to make sure it's well used. Just some kind of rapid fire questions just to finish off with that I ask all guests. So your quickest answer, and let's see how you go on. What do you think, Brittany, has been your greatest ABM learning?
Um, Always be experimenting, right?
There you go. You had that one. You had that answer ready. And the hardest part of ABM.
Alignment and buy-in, but once you get there, it's all worth it.
So it's hard, but you can get there eventually. Is basically
You
what you're
can,
saying,
yeah.
right?
It's hard, but I think once you show that value, and even if it takes some holding, you'll get there, and it's so valuable.
Good to hear. Misconception. What about the greatest misconception about ABM?
Thought it's only marketing, and I think that's a common misconception. I don't think I'm the only one that recognizes that. It's more about marketing. It's about the whole go-to-market function.
And is it the case then that you have to kind of reiterate that message when you're talking to people in the business and say it's much more than the M is a little bit misleading in account-based marketing?
Somewhat, yeah. And it's not just marketing against sales, it's a collaboration. And but again, like I said, once you get there, it's very, very valuable and very, very impactful.
Good to hear. Last question. So we're recording this on a Monday. I think it's a Monday morning for you there over in Texas. But let's fast forward to Friday. It's been a really tough week, and you just want to close your laptop down and enjoy some time with your family, have a Coke or a glass of wine or whatever your favorite tip is. And you get a phone call from an old colleague who says, "Brittany, you've got to help me. I've been asked to do a presentation to my CEO on Monday morning. What is that one thing I must include to make sure that the presentation goes down well?" What would be that one thing you would say to them? Please include this
Is this specific around ABM, I'm assuming?
around ABM. Yes.
Make sure, well, I don't know if it's anything specific, but I'd say it's more just a generic theme is to make it relevant for them. Make sure you know who you're talking to. If it's for the CEO, make sure you're speaking at that executive level and showing them what they care about because it's not going to be impressions or clicks or, vanity metrics like that. It's going to be tied to what can this bring that will help the bottom line and help grow revenue.
To basically, yeah, go back to your point around alignment, making sure that it's aligned to what's important for them.
Right.
Yeah, I think, yeah, if you ever mention impressions or clicks to a CEO, they'll probably show you the door probably quite quickly.
Probably.
Um, Brittany, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your ABM journey with us today, and I wish you and the team at Gamewell Technologies every success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad to be here.